Hello and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is Leading Virtually, Build Your Dream Team. My name is Claire Shook. I'm the event coordinator with the West Business Development Center. This webinar is brought to you by the West Business Development Center. We are a nonprofit funded by the Small Business Administration, the SBA, a federal organization, and we host two centers. We host the Women's Business Center and we host the Small Business Development Center for Mendocino and Lake County. West is funded through federal, California state, and local government grants. In exchange for these grants, we provide free, confidential business services. Our goal is to offer these services to small business owners and entrepreneurs during every stage of their business development. So whether you're just starting out with a part-time hobby or an idea, or you've been in business for many, many years, we want to be there for you to help you with your business. Do you mind moving to the next slide, please? So the way we help our small business owners and entrepreneurs is several different ways. Primarily, it is with our no-cost one-on-one advising. If you have a question or you're experiencing any issues with your business starting or operating, you can speak directly with an advisor who is an expert in the field you have a question about, whether it's general business, marketing, permitting, accounting, hiring, HR. We run the whole gamut. There are no limits to counseling sessions, and we have a wide variety of advisors who can help you. We also offer low-cost workshops and free webinars like the one you're at today, as well as loan packets and loan advising. So if you're getting ready to apply for a small business loan or you have questions about a small business loan, we have advisors who can help you with that process. And that's basically how our funding is used and what we do. If you're interested in learning more about our services and how we can help you, I really encourage you to reach out via a phone call or visiting our website and getting started there. As I said before, we are recording, and I will be emailing everyone a link to the recording of this session as well as a copy of the slide deck in the next couple of days. So just keep your eye on your inbox for that. So without further ado, I am going to pass things off to our amazing instructor today, Lorena Kibbe. Please take it away.
Thank you, Claire. Hey, everybody, it's good to see you. Well, see you. Happy to be with you. I want you to know I welcome your input today. So chat us up, let me know what you're thinking. I'll try to keep up with the chat as I go today, and I'll be asking you to put some things in chat because I'd like to hear from you as we go. Really appreciate you being here. I think just the first thing I want to say to you is, it's important that you're here, and kudos to you for being here. Right now is a time when we need to be doing everything we can to learn more. And I think one of the things that's very exciting is that we are having all kinds of opportunities to get some really good information at low cost and sometimes free. And it's really amazing to take advantage of that. But I'm in the same boat as you. And sometimes it's a little overwhelming. Like, how many of these things can I watch and listen to? So I get you on that. I get you. But I'm really proud of you for being here today because it says a lot about your commitment, your willingness and your eagerness to really improve your business and to improve your leadership skills. So thank you for being here. We're going to talk about leading virtually and trying to build a dream team in a virtual world. Lots of things to think about here. First, I just want to tell you, oh my goodness, March 2020. Oh boy. When we first started hearing about the lockdown, so many of the things they were asking us to do just seemed impossible. Like, how could we possibly send everybody home and work remotely? Come on. What's funny is that just like a few weeks before the lockdown, I was doing a session with a group of managers, and we were talking about the future of management and what kinds of things organizations would have to do to be competitive. And this manager, the group consensus was that one of the things that organizations would need to do is focus a little more on remote work and look at opportunities for remote work and how remote work could work in an organization, how they could have more people working remotely and so on. And I had a manager argue with me and with the entire group that remote work was impossible for his organization. Impossible. He said, no, there is no way that we could do these jobs remotely because we're working with the public sector and we have to be there because they want us there. And there's no way that we could do these jobs from home. Boy, I wish I'd had the opportunity to talk with him a couple months later when he was in a situation where he had to do the impossible and send everybody home and still do a great job. The interesting thing is I have communicated with them now, and they really are doing a great job. Somebody showed me this about this word impossible, and I love this, so I'm going to show you. Impossible, with just a little bit of change and a change in perspective, impossible turns to I'm possible. I love that. So a lot of things that we thought were not possible, we're finding, in fact, are possible, right? You may have heard this word before, paradigm. And this is Joel Barker. He taught us a lot about paradigms and paradigm shifts. And I find this to be especially relevant right now because I think we are in the middle of a paradigm shift. And honestly, even though things are hard, it's hard to manage a team remotely, especially a dream team. So much of the business that we're doing is difficult. We're in a time when we're witnessing a complete change in the way that we do business. And I really think it's kind of cool in a way to be witnessing this and to see the kinds of things that are happening that we never thought we could do. So a paradigm is a set of rules, written or unwritten, that establishes boundaries within which we learn how to be successful. That's what a paradigm is. Usually, the first problems we solve when there's a paradigm shift are the ones that were unsolvable with the old paradigm. So kind of like the manager I was just talking about who said, this is not possible, we can't possibly do it. First problem that had to be solved was to figure out a way to do it. Even my church gave me a good example of this. Last week, I was in a virtual meeting with just several people, a small group from the church, and they were talking about how for like 4 years before the lockdown, before this all happened, the pastor, the leader, the pastor had been saying we had to find a way to be able to broadcast our services, to stream our services, to reach people who couldn't come to church. And the vestry and the leadership of the church, the board, continuously rejected the notion. It's not technologically possible for us. It's too expensive for us. There's no way we can afford it. We don't have the knowledge to do it, on and on for 4 years. In a matter of 2 months, they completely converted it and now have one of the best streaming services for their religious services, small groups, meetings, everything they were doing than ever before. And guess what? Church participation is up because it's accessible to people to whom before it was not accessible. So it's just incredible that in this time we're shifting. We're finding ways to solve problems that before were unsolvable. And I think that's exciting. I think that's an exciting time to be in as a business owner. I'm a business owner too. I went from traveling all over the country to do presentations and help leaders to doing it all virtually. That's a big change, and I had to really work on how to do it. But now it's pretty exciting, finding ways to do it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to a day when I can travel again and come and see people live. But hey, look what we're able to do right now, how much we're able to provide that we thought was impossible before. Joel Barker told us that when a paradigm shifts, everything goes back to zero. Everything goes back to zero, like we're on level ground again. We have to find new rules, new boundaries, new ways of doing things that we didn't do before. And really, this is not new. I mean, if you think about examples of paradigm shifts in history, you studied them in school, like all the way back to Alexander Graham Bell and the telephone. Did you know, like in the late 1800s, when he first invented the telephone, he took it to AT&T and said, hey, look at this. This is amazing. This is going to change the world. And you know what they said? They said, that's a toy. That's nothing more than a toy. There's no room for that here. It has no future. They turned him away. A few years later, he bought AT&T. He caused a paradigm shift. AT&T missed it the first go around. There's example after example like this. Remember Blockbuster Video? Remember when we used to have kiosks where you had to take this stuff called film to get your pictures developed? We had cameras that you had to buy film to put into it, like craziness, That's a paradigm shift. The entire digital evolution is a paradigm shift. And the way we're doing business right now represents a paradigm shift as well. So this is our first poll. And Claire, if you want to put our first poll up for me, here's the question. Yeah, we are in the middle of a paradigm shift. There's no question about that. I'm wondering if you really think about it, are you successfully finding ways to solve problems that will fundamentally change what you do for the better? Is it possible that this is not all bad, that there's some real good that's going to come out of this. So if you would, participate in this poll for me. Tell me what you think. Yes, absolutely. I'm absolutely finding ways to solve problems that are going to change what I do for the better. Or no, it's a train wreck. I've heard some people say that. I'm working on it, or I need more time to think about this. So put in your poll results. I don't think, Claire, we can see it until everybody's done. Is that right? I don't see anything happening here, but I'm hopefully people are participating. Yeah.
Yes, people are participating. Thank you all so much. As soon as it's done, I will make sure that the results are visible.
Okay, thank you. This is cool. How are we doing, Claire? I just can't wait. I get so excited. I want to see what they're saying.
We've got most everyone has answered. Shall I go ahead and publish the results?
Yeah, let's see what we got. Drum roll. Hey, cool. Yes, absolutely. Nobody has a train wreck. That's amazing. I'm so happy. And I need more time. Hey, this is really good. Everybody, 100% either says yes, absolutely, or I'm working on it. Wow, that is cool. I mean, I would say yes, absolutely. I have found ways to solve problems that will change what I do for the better. But there's a lot more that I'm still working on too. So I might have trouble with that question. I might want to put A and C or all of the above. I'm not sure. That's really interesting. Wow. Thank you so much, Claire. I appreciate it. So I'm glad that you're finding some positive outcomes here, because, really there are benefits to what's going on. No question. I mean, we have more time with family. We can hold our pets on our lap, right? There are benefits. I'd like to see some chat on this. Tell me what benefits you're seeing from this paradigm shift, from things that are going on. What kind of benefits are you seeing? I'm hearing that people are enjoying that they don't have to commute so far, that they're healthier because they're exercising more. Then I also hear some people say they're eating more, so I'm not sure if that works out. Let's see. What are you seeing? Pandemic has trained folks via family and business Zoom meetings to utilize this tool. Yeah, really. I did several interviews with farmers across the U.S. Yeah, in the past with that can only be done in person. I'm hearing that so much. That's great. What else? What other benefits? I'm hearing a lot of organizations are finding that they're more productive. Higher productivity. There are definitely benefits. Haven't gotten the flu this year so far. Yeah, I know. I haven't had the cold or flu for a while, and I'm thankful for that. More streamlined procedures. Good. Okay, so I think we can agree there's definitely benefits, definitely. But there are some things that are missing too, which I know you know this, but that face-to-face interaction, I miss it. This is nice that we can do this way, but it really is different from being with you face-to-face. It's really different. Like when I do a live presentation, I can see the audience, I can get a feel for how they're taking this and what they're thinking. I know when to pull back and pause, and I know when to ask questions and let them ask questions. This is really different. I can't see everybody. So I miss that. And most people are finding that they're missing that face-to-face interaction and just that everyday access to each other, to your manager, to your team, the water cooler talk where you have that collaboration that was unplanned. And, it's like you talk about the weather and then you end up having this big discussion about a project, and so helpful sometimes, Even that focused environment. Not everybody has a great place to work in their home. And some people that are working in focused environments, like the ones that have to go back to the office, are having trouble because they're not used to it being so focused. It's a completely different dynamic when there's nobody there. Kind of like, a football game where nobody cheers. The concert performances where nobody cheers. It's just really different. The nonverbals. We learn a lot from nonverbals, and telephone calls are tough sometimes. You can't really watch everything going on Zoom, so we're missing out on that. And sometimes just the basic tools. I'm doing, like I said, a lot of things virtually, and I'm finding that some people just really don't have the tools to participate in remote work in their homes. They just weren't prepared for it, and organizations are having a struggle trying to provide this kind of tools and keep up with it. One of the things I do is a certification class for managers. It's 4 full days that I've always done in person. Now I found the way to do it using Zoom, but I actually have people joining that class with their telephone, that little bitty screen for 4 solid days. That seems like a lot to me. I need a couple of big monitors, to watch this. So sometimes just even have the tools is difficult. So the question is, how can we build our dream team with this new paradigm? We have some teams that are working completely remote. We have some teams that have some people working remote, some people in the office, and we have some teams that are still having to come into the office. So with everything that's going on, the change, the transitions, how do we do this? Well, I have some ideas for you. Actually, I have 5 must-dos. But I have to be straight with you. These are not really new things. You've heard most of these things before, but the execution is different. The perception is different. The perspective is different. Just like the slide where I showed you the word impossible and then changed it to I'm possible, you have to look at things a little differently. As a matter of fact, you have to look at things in a whole new way. So even though we've heard these things before, and that's the good news, because that means that you already know the skills. It's just how you practice them and how you emphasize them and how you put them in place. Okay. So here's one of the things that you should know. And I'm really happy to report this because I kept saying, before I started doing webinars on this, that the thing we got to realize is that this is not really a different skill set. I mean, we already have the skills we need to do this. It's just how we apply it. So I was really happy when I found this article to back me up in Harvard Business Review. One of the biggest misconceptions about managing remotely is that it requires an entirely different skill set. It doesn't. It doesn't require an entirely different skill set. We have the tools that we need. What shifts is the way that we apply them and our mindset about these things. So let me show you what I mean. Here's the first one: prioritize clarity. Okay, what is that? Prioritize clarity. Well, the thing is, we have to be very clear right now with our team about what our purpose is and what we're working on. That's always important with a team. If a team is not clear about their purpose, if they don't have a common goal, they're going to have trouble succeeding. But right now, the common goal is kind of hard to keep an eye on. And it's difficult sometimes to be sure of what is the focus. I call it the main thing. What is the main thing? So what is the main thing that we are all working on right now? And I'll tell you why I think this is so important, because in my work, when I go out and try to help leadership teams, one of my standard questions is to go individually from team member to team member and say, tell me, what's the main thing? What's the one thing? What's the common purpose here? What's the one thing that everyone's working on together? What's your main thing? I get different answers from different people. Very seldom do I come across a team where everybody answers that question the same. See, that's a problem, because it means that you have some people who are working very, very hard on the wrong thing, not the main thing. So especially when you have people who are working remotely, it's really critical that we're very clear about what the main thing is and what we should all be working on right now. So are you clear on what the main thing is? Does everybody agree on what's most important? That's what we have to ask ourselves, and we have to make sure that people are really, really paying attention to this. And this brings us to our second poll. I want to check in with you on this. So Claire, if you want to put that second poll up, let me ask you this question. How many times do you feel like your main thing has changed since March 2020, which is almost a year ago? Can you believe that? Only once? Probably 2 to 4 times. I lost count. Or maybe it hasn't changed at all. I'd like to hear what you're thinking. How many times do you feel like your main thing has changed since March 2020?
We are getting our answers. Thank you all so much. Shall we give it another 30 seconds or so?
Yeah, just a few more seconds. I'm checking chat real quick. I love to see your comments in chat. Thanks everybody for that. Denise says, we have clients beyond our local region, new clients across California and even out of state because everything is remote. Oh, I know. It's crazy. It's also pretty cool to be able to reach so many people. Okay, Claire, what do we got? Let's see how it's looking out there.
All right.
Oh, let's see what we got. Okay, so only once. Got nothing on that. Probably 2 to 4 times, 38%. I lost count. Wow, 50%. And it hasn't changed. Okay, so the bigger question here, I hope you understand, is do the people that work for you know this? Does your team know that the main thing has changed? And especially if it's changed 2 to 4 times, like, have you been really clear with them when it changes so that everybody's working really hard on the same thing? That's the bigger question here. To the person who said it hasn't changed, that's amazing because the world has changed so much. To think that your main thing is solid and didn't change, that's pretty cool. I'd really love to have a discussion with you and hear more about that because I think that's really unusual and cool. But again, the question is everybody aware of what the main thing is, and is everyone able to stay focused on that? So that's cool. So this is something to think about with your team, just making sure that everybody is on the same page and everybody is really clear on what the main thing is and what you're working on. So I call it prioritizing clarity. All right. Here's number 2, mindful communication. I'm sure you're not surprised to see this here because that's always the number 1 problem in any organization. Anytime I go in and talk to an organization, what's the biggest problem here? It's always communication. And it's no wonder because there are so many different ways to communicate and so many different ways to interpret what is communicated. It's no wonder we ever understand anything that we're saying to each other, isn't it? Communication's a really, really big deal. But especially now, we have to be very mindful about how we communicate. We have to make sure that we are communicating with different channels for different people. You know, we know that we have some people who don't read their email. They prefer text. We have some people who will not read text. We just have different ways of communicating. And as leaders of a team, especially when you have virtual members, you really have to be acutely aware of that. You know, I think one of the big things that's changed with this paradigm shift is our understanding of what remote work is. Because I do think there was a mindset prior to all of this that remote people shouldn't be touched. I mean, remote people work remotely because, you know, they're independent. We don't have daily contact with them sometimes. You know, they have a pretty well-defined set of standards and they do that and life is good and we go on. But that's not the case anymore. You know, whether you're working from home or your office or the corner bookstore, wherever you are, you're still working. So it's really important to make sure that we're having that constant contact and communication. And it's more than just, you know, checking in. It's like if you're a team, you're collaborating, you're communicating as a team, you're solving problems together, you're having meetings. So mindful communication right now is just critically important. This is one of the things I recommend, and that's just to have discussions with everybody about the best way to reach me. And this is just an example, you know, that I threw up here, but it would be a lot easier if we understood people's communication preferences. And if you're looking at having a dream team, one of the best things you can do for yourself is understand this. I'll tell you why. I'll give you an example. There are some people who have a style in which they, and this is quite a few people, probably about a quarter of the population, if you understand personality styles, they get focused on something and they're very focused on it. And if you pop into their office and say, hey, I want to talk to you about such and such, they can't shift mentally. They're like, what's wrong with you? I'm busy, you know, get away from me. They don't hear you. They don't listen well, you know, because they're focused on what they're doing. Those are our drivers. Those are people that are driving these forwards. That's cool. And we can see physically when we walk in the office that, I need to come back in 15. You know, we can say, hey, should I come back in 15 minutes? Okay. If you call them on the phone in the middle of that, because they're working remotely, remember the nonverbal thing? You got no nonverbals going. Chances are that conversation's not going to go great because they're not with you. You know, they're not prepared. So for that person, you know, they may say, I would prefer a text saying, let's talk. I'm going to call you in 5 minutes so that I can shift my thinking and get ready for that than for you to just call. All right. Could we have those kind of open, honest discussions about what works best for me and what's most effective? There's a couple things on here that might look weird to you, like the one that says face-to-face, FaceTime me anytime. You know, there is a whole lot of people, a whole generation, in fact, who enjoys FaceTime. They would just assume you FaceTime them, then call them. So, okay, FaceTime them. But the one thing that I think is important here, and that's the second thing I wanted to point out, like I have on here, team core hours 9 to 4. You need to have core hours when everybody understands that it's okay for you to reach me, that I'm going to answer the phone, that I'm working, I'm actively participating here. So you can call me anytime between 9 to 4. I can schedule a meeting if I need to between 9 and 4. It's just important that we have some overlapping hours where all the team is active, all the team is available, and you know that they can reach their teammates during this time, and you can call a meeting if you need to pull in everyone on a project in a hurry. So those core hours, it's just a discussion I'm encouraging you to have about the best ways to communicate when you have some people in the office, some people remote, whatever the situation. This really, really important communication piece to make sure that everybody's included and involved in communication. Just a second, I see a message from Denise. We have a link to our calendar in our email signature line so people can see our availability for an appointment and schedule a time. The program is called Calendly. Oh my gosh, Denise, that's so cool. What is this? That is so cool. Calendly, I've heard, is great, and there's quite a few programs out there for scheduling appointments, but I've heard that this is a really great application. That's cool. As a matter of fact, look at this slide. I wanted to show you this. I got this email from someone at ASBDC, and this was their signature line right here, and it says, you can see in the big red letters, it says remote working hours, 8:30 to 4 p.m. EST. I love that. I'm an outsider. I don't know what's going on. With this message, I clearly understand when I can get in contact with them. And they even included EST, so I'll understand they're on Eastern time. That makes a big difference. But I love this. This is their signature line. And this tells me that they're working from home. That gives me a lot of information. I know what's going on now in that office. And the best time, when I should reach them. Those are their work hours, and I can respect that. And having a link in your signature line to schedule an appointment, that's just over the top cool. That's awesome. Oh, I love that. So communication is just a very important piece. And also, our meetings. Things haven't changed. The rules haven't changed for meetings. We still need to be having meetings and having effective meetings, using all the skills that we've ever learned about having effective meetings. But just a couple of things that are different that you see on the left side is, first thing is just, provide training to whatever software you decide to use. The good news is that applications like Zoom have done an amazing job in upgrading their services. My favorite is Zoom because it's very intuitive. It's like when you press a button, it actually does what you think it's going to do, and no one can see that you're screwing with it, and it never messes up. But I know that not everybody loves Zoom. Some people like Teams. There's all kinds of different things. Whatever you decide to do, make sure that everybody has training in it and knows how to use it. The good news is most of these programs offer free training. I've become known as kind of a Google expert. Actually, I was talking to Clara before the session saying, hey, you're a Google expert. Can you answer this? An expert in using Zoom. Can you answer this question? And sometimes people will call me and say, hey, Lorna, how do you do this on Zoom? And if I don't know, to be honest with you, I just Google, how do I do this on Zoom? And the answer pops up, and I said, oh, this is what you do. And they think I'm an expert. It's so easy to use. So, take advantage of that right now. Just make sure that everybody has the tools and equipment that they need, like we talked about before. And then for your meetings, just make sure you're following all the best practices. Have an agenda just like you always have. Assign roles just like you always do. Who's going to keep notes? Who's going to do the follow-up? Who's going to facilitate the meeting? Ground rules. This is something we should always be doing in meetings. But right now, it's even more important to do because the ground rules are a little different. Like, do you want me to keep my camera on? When is it okay for me to turn it off? Like, if I want to blow my nose, is it okay to mute? Do you want me to stay muted? Do you want everybody on? How does it work? How is it going to work with these new tools? So having those discussions about ground rules, I think, are good. What if my phone rings during a meeting? Do you want me to answer the phone, or do you want me to stay on the call? How just those kind of things. What are we going to do? facilitate your meetings, keep them on topic and on time, capture your action items and follow up, just like you always do when you have meetings. The one thing that I'm finding with communication with these kind of tools, though, is that sometimes I see people really rushing through meetings because it's harder to have some of the in-depth discussions that we have when we're face-to-face. So you got to watch out for that you're not just kind of, not paying attention to what's going on in the meeting and giving people time just to check in with each other, have some of that small talk that really helps in meetings. What I've been doing with my meetings for associations and such is I usually start by putting everybody in breakout rooms for a few minutes, like 2 or 3 people per room. And their mission is to just say, hello, how are you? And here's how I'm doing. And sometimes I do that 2 or 3 rounds because it's not easy to do that when the meeting's in session. But I think it's still important that people have time to do a little bit of small talk and just check in with each other. So there are ways to facilitate that. Okay, Claire, this is the third poll about communicating. And I just want to see what everyone's thinking here. When you're communicating with your remote team members and customers, which answer most accurately describes the frequency of communication you have had since the lockdown, since March of 2020? Would you say that communication has increased? Would you say that it's stayed about the same or that it's decreased? We're talking about the frequency of communication since COVID, since the lockdown. Increased, stayed about the same, or decreased? Let's hear what you're thinking here.
We are getting lots of answers in. I think give it another 10 or 15 seconds and I will share the results.
I really appreciate everybody, chiming in on the polls because it gives us some great insight as to how things are going. So, and I think it's good for you to think these over, think over the question like, how is this working for me? Okay, here we go. Let's see what we have. Communication has increased, 78%. Communication frequency has stayed about the same for 11%. And communication has decreased for 11%. Okay. Well, this is interesting. Communication has increased for a lot of people. And don't you find that really interesting that, for most of you, you said that communication has increased. I have to tell you, I'm proud of you because I think communication needs to increase right now. There is so much going on, and not just because we're working remotely or not. It's just that we are in such a time of change. And when we have so much change, it's more important than ever to be communicating, and not just meetings. If you were thinking just meetings, not just meetings, but one-on-one with your employees and with your peers. It's really hard to make it happen right now, and it's more important than ever. So I'm glad to see that so many of you say that it's increased. For those of you that said it stayed the same, kudos. I mean, at least you didn't go down. I'm sorry about the person who said it decreased, but it's just the decrease worries me. And I know there can be reasons for it, but like I said, this is just a time of great change. And we know that in times of change, perceptions are distorted. And it's really important that we're communicating with people and making sure that everyone's with us on the change and staying with us. So thanks for being honest. This is something really important to think about. So thanks, Claire. We can take that down. And that brings me to the next thing, which is engagement. So it's kind of timely with that question, just making sure that everybody is included. A participatory management style. This is really the time for you to include your employees, help them to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. Get their opinions on things, talk to them, be patient with them, and be diligent. Don't give up on them. You have these amazing people on your team for the most part that you hired and you trust. this is a time to really employ that trust, to really trust them and to have them be part of what's going on. Nobody should be getting off the hook here. There's a lot of people who will shut down and not do really well in the remote environment. And it's going to be up to you to call them out, to say, oh, come on, Claire, what are you thinking? You haven't said much. I want to hear what you think. Denise, what's your opinion? Call people out. Stephen, I need to hear from you. What are you thinking? Don't let people get away with not participating. And don't forget that now it's more important than ever to grow your team as far as improving skills. Don't let that slip by, because if you look in our past and we look at, why do people stay in the jobs they're in, we know that one of the most important retention factors is that we have opportunities to learn and grow. And I don't think that's going to change. So make sure that we're giving people those opportunities to learn and grow, to be fully engaged. So talk about focus, talk about clarity again. Share tips with them for scheduling and creating a routine. Some people are struggling with just working at home and being on their own. It's many of us are entrepreneurs, and we're used to doing that, but there are some people that are not used to doing that, and they're struggling with that. So we can help them with that. I would say insist on professionalism. I've seen some pretty scary things in virtual meetings, and I have to say that, being kind of secluded with all of this and being required to work from home for so long, I get kind of excited when I put on shoes that have a little heel and it clicks on the floor. It's exciting. It's just like the old days. So insist that people, come across professionally and participate in that way. Don't let them get away with just being completely sloppy. It's funny because I moved to a new area right at the start of all this, and the news people on TV, the local news, were dressed so poorly. I mean, t-shirts, tennis shoes, and I thought, what have I done? Where am I? Like, these people are not professional at all. It just completely formed my opinion that they were just unprofessional. And within 2 weeks, they came back in with suits and ties and all this, what I expected. But they had just let their guard down because we were in lockdown and everybody was like, oh my gosh, we're working from home. We should just, no, remember that you still have a professional image. So keep that going. Encourage dialogue with your people, not just conversation, but encourage them to speak. And again, those growth opportunities. Don't forget, a lot of people are very social, and we have to provide for those social connections, especially at a time when, most of our meetings are like, let's just get it done and get through business. So yeah. So keeping others engaged is really important. Let me see what Jenny said here. Our communication staying the same has been a real uphill struggle due to folks not wanting to make changes and use technology. Oh, I hear that. It has been taking a lot of effort to reach everyone. I do like your best way to reach me questionnaire. Wow, cool. Thanks, Jenny, for that input. I think a lot of people are struggling with that. Wow. Yeah, using the technology. Oh, man. We're getting better, but it is, like you said, an uphill struggle. Okay. All right, here's a big one. Here's a big one, folks. Addressing problems. I know you're thinking, really, that's my life. That's all I do is address problems. But the truth is, there may be things going on that you don't realize. I think why it's so important to bring this up is because we know that in survey after survey, book after book, study after study, time after time, if we talk about demotivating factors, if we talk about the things that demotivate people, number one, over and over again, the thing that most demotivates employees is that their supervisor tolerates poor performance. Yeah, the supervisor tolerates poor performance. And you might be able to relate to this. You're working your tail off. This person over here is not doing nearly what you're doing. They're getting away with it. Nobody's doing anything about it. And what do you get in turn? You get more work. That is so discouraging when that happens to you. It's frustrating, very demotivating. And we see it a lot because dealing with those kind of issues, with those kind of problems is just so hard. And, we all want a harmonious work environment. We want things just to be okay. And so sometimes we kind of sweep those things under the carpet a little bit because it's just easier, especially in this environment. How do you deal with that remotely? Are you kidding me? But it's more important than ever. If you see problems, if you get any hint of problems, and this is why communication is so important and why it's important that you take time to check in, because right now it's really easy for those kind of things just to be out of our line of vision, right? I had one manager tell me, he said, I have one employee that I'm pretty sure hasn't done anything for 2 months, and I just don't even know what to do. So are you thinking what I'm thinking? Because my first thing was, 2 months? Are you kidding me? How did we let this go for 2 months? Oh my goodness. So we really need to bear down on these problems and make sure that we're addressing them. This is not a time to just let those things go. We have to really pay attention, or we could end up with some really bad results that we just didn't even see coming. So here are some tips for this. Denise says, best thing you can do to keep your high-performing employees is to address the performance of your low-performing employees. Exactly, Denise. That's what we're hearing over and over again. So give them clear assignments with a solid deadline. Give them constant feedback, positive and redirection, and expect it in return. Ask for that in return. I was in a meeting, a year ago, last January. Remember when we used to have like meetings and, you could go to these things and there were people there and we were all in one room? Yeah, it was one of those. And there was a panel of millennials and they were talking about what's important to them in their jobs and why they stay in the jobs they're in, what's important, what's most important. Every one of them unanimously agreed that the biggest thing that they look for was feedback. These are kids that grew up getting participation trophies. So they want to know how they're doing. And they even want to know if they're not doing well. They want feedback. They don't want you to leave them alone and not let them know how they're doing. They want you to tell them, here's what you're doing well, and here's something we could change up and make it better. So that feedback is critically important, especially now. Don't let it go. We need to be appreciating people now. We need to be letting them know how to fix problems, delegating to them and helping them to be, like I said, part of the solution. One thing is to maybe create some anonymous polls. There's a lot of great tools for that. Sometimes I'll send out, one question a week, like, I have the tools I need to do my job. Just do they feel like they have the tools, technology, otherwise. I understand what my expectations are. I understand what's expected of me. I feel like I'm communicating effectively, or that people are communicating effectively with me. Just one little question, something just to check in with everybody and do it anonymously, just so that you can see, you can get some of that honest feedback. One-on-one, don't forget to meet one-on-one with these folks. Virtual lunches are working pretty good. It's like I've had some virtual happy hours. You probably have too, so we can have lunch, over Zoom. Yeah, I miss it too. It's not the same, but it's what we have right now. So it works. And probably most important is just pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on around you. You can tell, especially, some of your teammates are loyal to you. They've been around a long time, and you can kind of see how they're doing. So don't ignore that little signal you get. Don't ignore that little gut feeling that something's off. Now's the time to really address that and have a conversation with them about just how they're doing. This is a really hard time. It's a really hard time for all of us, and as much as I sit here and I'm optimistic and I'm excited about some of the things I see happening, it's hard for me too. It's hard for everybody. Sometimes I just need for somebody to hear that from me. And sometimes as the leader of the team, you're the one that needs to ask. All right. Okay. And the last thing I'm going to talk about today in managing your team virtually and creating your dream team, and really whether it's virtual or not, but it's just this whole thing about work-life balance. And I'm starting a movement. I don't want to call it work-life balance anymore. I want to call it work-life integration. And here's why. When I was a manager growing up in the government sector, public sector, we used to have big discussions about this. I mean, it was about balance because, when you were at work, you were at work. And when you were at home, you were at home. And the two were never to cross. We weren't supposed to take personal calls. We weren't supposed to think about our family during work. Come on. That's just impossible. I mean, I've never been at work and not thought about my family and my personal life. And I've never been at home and been able to completely block what's going on at work. I'm just one person. We're all all one person. We have one brain, and all of these things make us who we are. So instead of fighting that, let's integrate it. Right now, this is very unique because we are seeing our employees and our teammates in ways we've never seen them. We're seeing into their homes. We're seeing their kids crawling on their laps. We're seeing cats walk across their backs in the middle of calls. We're seeing when their space is really cramped. We're seeing when it's well organized. We're seeing all kinds of things about our employees and our teammates that we've not been privy to before. And I think for the first time on a human level, people are more vulnerable and understanding of the whole picture of everything that's going on, not just what they see in the office. So I think this is a really good time to talk about integration. And that means being empathetic, understanding, trying to understand the feelings of others and to let them know that you understand that maybe things are hard right now and that you get that. There was this guy named Jim Autry, and he wrote a book called For Love or Profit. And this comes from him. His whole thing was, we say nobody around here deserves special treatment. His line was everybody around here deserves special treatment. And I think it's just being aware of our employees and their different needs and helping them to be that one person and to be good in all areas of their life. So I'm here to stamp out work-life balance and talk about work-life integration. And that's my 2 cents. So there you have it. There you have it. Managing in a virtual world. Like I said, there's nothing here that, is brand new, but we do have some brand new perspectives and some brand new ways of looking at things and understanding how important these things are, both for people who are working remotely and for people who are working in the office, and especially when you have that combined dynamic. So what I'm wondering is, and this is our last poll, so Claire, if you could put this up. What I'm wondering is, which one of these do you think is your number one priority, like right now? After hearing this, what do you think you need to work on to really make the biggest impact right now? So let's see what you think. Clarity, making sure that everyone understands the main thing. Or communication, just being really mindful about it. Including everyone, delegating, trusting, engaging everyone, using all of their talents. Addressing problems, just really keep your eye on what's going on and understand there are things happening below the surface. And promoting that work-life integration. What's important to you right now? What do you think is most important? What do you think, Clara? How are we doing?
We're doing really well. Going to give it just another couple seconds, and then I'll go ahead and push those results live. And just to remind everyone, if you have any questions, please put those questions in the Q&A or in the chat box so we can get those answered.
Oh, okay. This is good. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Mindful communication, addressing problems, tied for the lead. Look at that. We have a tie between mindful communication and addressing problems. And then we have some on clarity. And this is personal. This is personal. So there's no right answer for this. This poll is really an attempt to get you to really think about your own situation and what's going on with your team, and just try to focus on one thing. And making the effort to be in these kind of webinars and educate yourself in this way is like just wonderful. And I appreciate it and I applaud you. But don't forget that what matters is after we hang up. What matters is what you do next with what you learned. So this is my hidden attempt to get you to really just maybe focus on one thing. Like, what can you start working on right now to create your dream team? What do you need to focus on? What needs to be your personal main thing to really help build the skills of your team? So don't forget to take this back and really work on it. And if you need more information on it, I'm always willing to have a discussion with you about that. So thanks for participating in that poll. Great job. Great job. Okay, so all of these things that we can do, I'm counting on you. Go out there and create your dream team and make it better. This is my book, Becoming a Better Boss. It's available on Amazon.com, and a lot of things that we talked about are in there that you can read about. Claire, do we have questions? Do we have some questions? Is that what I'm understanding that we want to cover?
I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A. Just to remind folks before we wrap up today, if they do have questions for you, to make sure to get those questions typed in.
And if you don't have a question, just give me some feedback in chat. Let me know what you're thinking. I really appreciated the feedback that y'all have been given. What do you think about these ideas? Has this been helpful to you? Are you still out there? Are you alive? Did you freeze to death?
All right. Well, while folks are thinking of their questions, seeing a couple of comments in the chat box that are popping up, which is great.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Oh, thanks, Denise. I'm glad to hear that.
We do have a question in the Q&A from Ted. Camera use, worth requiring to have on or just strong suggesting?
Camera use, worth requiring to have on. I require it. and here's why, Ted, because nonverbals. It's really important to me when we're having a team meeting and we're talking about things. It's so hard for me right now to sometimes identify problems, but I can still clue in to nonverbals pretty well, especially if I'm having a meeting with my team and there's not a bunch of people on there. You know, like I have like maybe 5 to 10 people on there, then I keep up with it pretty well. But also in ground rules, you know, we cover that. There are times when you want to turn your camera off, and I'm okay with that for a short period of time. Like if you want to blow your nose, you know, turn your camera off. Or, you know, if your kid runs in and they're naked, you can turn the camera off. Especially if your husband just got out of the shower and walks behind you in a towel. Please turn the camera off. I've seen that too. That was scary. That guy was really hairy. But anyway, so I really prefer to have it on, and I ask people to have it on and try to teach them the value of having it on, because I want them to feel comfortable about it too. But I do allow brief times for them to turn it off, because you know what, frankly, it depends on how long your meeting is, but it gets kind of grueling sometimes to just have that camera on all the time. Sometimes when I'm listening to a webinar and I know there's nothing really to see visually, because some people don't have anything visually, it's just them talking to you the whole time, I'll turn my camera off and do some stretching, you know, and I can listen, I can hear everything, and I enjoy it a lot better. So I think it just depends on the kind of meeting you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. But for the most part, I'm pro camera, just because I really want to see the nonverbals. So I hope that answers your question.
Great. Thank you so much. If there are any other questions, please feel free to put those questions either in the Q&A or in the chat box. And in the meantime, Lorena, I don't want to interrupt your presentation if you've got any other points that you wanted to touch on before we wrap up for today.
I would just close by, again, you know, saying kudos to those of you that are here. Thank you for doing what you can to think things over. These kinds of sessions are about helping you to really think about your own situation and what you can do to improve. But I think we all have to know that we are going to get through this. We're going to get through it, and we're going to come out of it stronger. You know, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. And Jess, I really thank you for all that you're doing to help people, because that's what you do. You help people in the jobs that you're in, and thanks for doing that. You know, thanks for doing that for me. And it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. We're going to do this.
Great. We do have another question in the Q&A. This questioner asks, suggestions on how to address individual performance problems virtually.
In some ways, it's a little bit easier to address them virtually, but only if you've set yourself up for success, which means that people have standards that they are expected to follow and they know what those are. If you have performance goals, that really helps because then you can tell when it's off. But some people are finding that it's really easier to have conversations about these hard, difficult things virtually because you're not sitting across the desk face to face, and it's a little bit easier. But it's not a lot different than having a face to face conversation. I mean, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person, they're hard conversations, but necessary conversations. And you can't stop just because they're not across the desk from you. In fact, it's more important than ever.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, I do want to be mindful of the time. So, of course, if there are any other questions, please, once again, feel free to put those in the Q&A or in the chat box. But as we're getting close to the top of the hour, I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So I'm going to go ahead and launch my own poll, if I may. While folks are answering these poll questions, I want to say to Lorena, thank you so much for coming today, for sharing all of these wonderful tips, tricks, and just opening up our minds to how we can virtually work together as a team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clara. It's my pleasure.
Wonderful. And thank you, everyone, for coming, for asking your questions, making your comments, participating in all the polls. We really, really appreciate it. If you are a small business owner or entrepreneur and you aren't already working with a SBDC or WBC advisor, I highly, highly recommend that you reach out to us so that you can get the individual help. No one business is alike, and we have a dozen advisors who are here ready and willing to help you virtually. Since the last March, we transitioned very quickly. We're doing all of our counseling sessions virtually. We can meet you virtually wherever you are about virtually any business-related questions that you might have. If you aren't in Mendocino or Lake County, call us anyway, and we will help put you in touch with your local SBDC or WBC. We are all across the U.S., and there are centers, dozens and dozens of centers here ready and willing and waiting to help small business owners and entrepreneurs during every stage of their business development. So, again, highly recommend that you reach out, and looking forward to seeing all of you at one of our next upcoming workshops with Wes. You can check out our workshop schedule. It's on our website. It's updated weekly, sometimes daily, sometimes twice a day by myself. So looking forward to seeing everyone at one of our next upcoming workshops. Again, looking at the time, we're just a minute past the top of the hour, so I think I'll go ahead and close out the poll. Thank you, everyone, for answering the questions, participating, for coming, and looking forward to seeing you all again. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.